For those of you who haven't read the program yet, I'm Frank Strnad, and today's lecture recital will be as a survey of the vocal romance. So let's start. Romance, romance, romanza, romanze. This term is one that historically has been widely used by musicians and composers, although history shows that the term did not and does not define any single specific musical genre or performance medium. From the 15th century onward, the Spanish romanza, from the provincial word romance, is a poetic ballad set to music whose content is comparable to the German Volksballade and the Italian ballate. Like the Volksballade, the Spanish romanza is characterized by repetition, epic formulaic language, brevity, and stylization. In France and Germany, the term came to indicate an extravagant, sentimental, or romantic tale, either in prose or strophic verse. In Italy, the term was used by opera composers to indicate short arias with slow tempi, or art songs composed for use in private homes and concert halls, instead of in the church or the theater. For vocal music, the terms romance, romanze, romanza were used in continental Europe and South America, but not in the British Isles or in North America, where the term ode was used instead. Also, and importantly, the term romance, romanze, romanza was used as a title to various types of instrumental works, both for instrumental solo and instrumental ensemble, but without unequivocally denoting a specific musical genre, musical form scheme, or performance mediums. Due to today's time restrictions, this lecture recital will be limited to solo vocal works designated and identified by the term romance in one form or another from the 18th and 19th century of France, Germany, and Italy. Spanish romanzas, ballads, often dwell on a single situation taken from a story, the effect being rather more of a heightening of the dramatic tension than of lyricism. The poetic form of these early romances was based on an octosyllabic quatrain with assonance, vowel rhyme, in alternate lines, which we will hear in Schubert's Ansilia, or with full rhyme. Spanish romanzas up to circa 1550 never had a refrain, but by the 17th century, they often had one, called an estribillo. This was not a result of the recreative process of oral tradition or poetic fashion, but rather by musicians themselves in their search for expressiveness. Spanish romanzas were performed by solo voices, ensembles of voices, and accompanied usually on fuelas, which is a guitar-like instrument, and then the big guitarrón. In Latin America, the Spanish romanza was taken to the New World by the first Spanish explorers and colonists and retained its roots in the Spanish form. They were performed by traveling fiddlers and performers called payadores, who accompanied themselves on the guitarrón. Versions of traditional romanzas are still sung by the Spanish population in the southwest USA, and the Mexican romanza shows both a literary and musical affinity with the Spanish, especially the Andalusian, with which it shares the name corrido. The octosyllabic Spanish quatrain form is the most common, often with an added refrain, an estribillo. The corrido is usually accompanied by the guitar and sometimes the harp, and in Jalisco, an instrumental ensemble called mariachi, which includes guitarrón, brass, and violins. In France, whose repertoire I'll begin the program with, the earliest definition of the term romance from the New Dictionary of the French Academy of 1718 suggests a link to the Spanish romanza. The definition is a word drawn from Spain and which means a kind of poesy in small verse containing some ancient history. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his Dictionary of Music of 1768, presented the first primarily musical definition of the term, suggesting that the melody should reflect the qualities of the poem: pointillism in verbal ornamentation, simplicity of manner, and a sweet, natural melody. In France, the romance grew in popularity during the last 3 decades of the 18th century. The genre's strophic form, generally, unadorned melody, subordinate accompaniment, and simple expression were ideally suited to exploit the sentimentality found present in opéra comique, which was a genre of opera which began in Paris in the early 18th century, featuring musical works consisting of farces and satires with spoken dialogue, with both romances and popular airs known as vaudevilles. One of the most important examples of the new French romance is Rousseau's Dans ma cabane obscure from his opera comique Le Divin du Village of 1752, which I will be opening today's program with. The strophic form of the piece, with its recurring 3-bar phrases, simple accompaniment, thin texture, and narrow melodic range, reflect the naive, natural state of the young peasant. Romances were composed by the leading opera comique composers of the time, including Rousseau, Monsigny, and Grétry. La pauvre enfant ne savait pas, from Grétry's opera comique Zemire et d'Azur, is an example of a romance in binary form, while still retaining a simple accompaniment and thin texture, while using sustained passages and melodic sequences to invoke a mood of sentimentality. The romance can also continue to appear in collections for drawing room performance. Jean-Paul Gilles Martini's Plaisir d'amour of 1783 is often cited as a landmark in the development of the French romance. It has a fully realized accompaniment, and the normal strophic form is replaced by a rondo pattern, which became increasingly popular in the 19th century. With the onset of the French Revolution in 1787, the charm and sentimentality of the romance were replaced by patriotic themes, themes of current events, tragedy, and later, terror. The huge popularity of these songs, romances, extended well into the early 19th century, exemplified by the 10 volumes of romances published in Paris in the early 19th century. After circa 1830, the romance as a song type began to give way to the more creative and innovative forms being developed at the time. Also, the songs of the Austrian composer Franz Schubert, published in France in translation as Mélodies, were of great influence to French composers who saw in Schubert's musical settings of poetic texts far more creative possibilities beyond those achieved by the simpler romance. In the mid-19th century, the term romance became interchangeable with the words chanson, meaning song, and mélodie. From a literary standpoint, the mélodie was indebted to the rising school of French Romantic poetry, headed by Lamartine and Victor Hugo, and the later symbolist poets such as Baudelaire, Verlaine, and Stéphane Mallarmé.
Oh J'ai tout quitté de la grande Sylvie. Porto son barco sur la mer pour passer la nuit aux étoiles. Vois, il souffle juste assez d'air pour enfler la toile du voile. Le vieux pêcheur italien, ici le fils qui nous conduise, écoute, Vénètre Andorien, au mot que nos bouches se disent. Sur la mer, calme et sombre, que
voices here. Germany. The Romanze, in 18th century Germany was heavily influenced by the French. Early German examples imitated the strophic form, simple melodies, and harmonies of French models. Elements of German folk song were also incorporated into the Romanze. The term Romanze was introduced to the German-speaking lands in 1756 with the publication of 3 poems by Johann Wilhelm Ludwig Klein. The collections of poems by Löwen in 1762 and Daniel Schiebler in 1767 were both set to music by the composer Johann Adam Hiller in 1767. These little strophically composed pieces were composed by Hiller primarily for his use in his singing school, as well as by amateur performers. From Hiller's later collection of 1774, I will be singing the strophic romance entitled Aeol. Hiller is credited with being the originator of the German Singspiel, another musical genre for the stage which combines spoken dialogue with popular song. The folk-like quality of the Romanze, or Romanzenlied, romance song, was ideal for expressing simple sentiments, and it soon became a standard feature in Singspiel. Such an example of this, which I will be singing, is the Romanze entitled Die Rose, the Rose, from Spohr's Singspiel Semir und Azur, same title as the earlier Guthrie. It is important to note that at this time, the late 18th to early 19th century, the term Lied, German for song, was becoming more and more the generic term under which various German art song types such as Romanze, Ballade, Ständchen, romance, ballad, serenade, etc., were categorized. Many of the leading German poets such as Herder, Goethe, Schiller, and Tieck provided textual materials for musical settings of their works for solo voice and piano. Where the songs of Mozart and Haydn were beautiful, yet still simple in design, Ludwig van Beethoven's contribution to the Lied, the song, was significant. In his Lied Adelaide of 1795, and his groundbreaking song cycle An die ferne Geliebte, To a Distant Lover of 1816, Beethoven exercised more care for the tonal structure of his songs and created more extended quasi-narrative musical form schemes which both enriched the poetry while remaining distinct in its own right. Schubert composed musical settings of texts of the great German poets of his day, both in a strophic Romanzen form, but now more often emulating and expanding on the example of Beethoven. By this time, the terms Lied, Romanze, and Ballade were often interchanged, although the Ballade emphasized and maintained an epic character as the story was an essential feature. The Romanze, though less dramatic and lyric, placed more emphasis on musical elements, especially the vocal line. The name Sylvia appears in 2 works on the program and deserves mention. I've mentioned it once, sung the word Sylvia in Plaisir d'amour, and I'll sing it in Schubert's Lied an Sylvia. In Schubert's Lied an Sylvia, he uses a German translation of the ode to the character Sylvia, recited by Proteus in Shakespeare's play Two Gentlemen from Verona. Let's go ahead and sing the group, and then we'll have a 10-minute intermission after the German group.
Fenster schwärmt, wie steh und Flocken träuset und den goldenen Dächer säuset. Alter Eon blase zu, niemand lässt so rasch als du. Aber lass nur mein Kamin, lass nur meine Laura glühen, lass nur meine Laura glühen. Sieht der alte Eol lacht, in des Savoiten Tracht, dicht vom Fenster bleibt er stehen und wir Laura küssen sehen. Bald vergisst der alte Greis schneegestebte Frost und Eis und der Wirbel finde schwar. Der Laura macht ihn wahr, der Laura macht ihn wahr. Oh nein, das ist zu toll, dass dich Laura küssen soll. Vor den Erde musst ja blasen und die Bäume überglasen. Denke nur an deine Pflicht, alte Greise tenne nicht. Gute Eol, hacke dich, meine Laura liebt nur mich, meine Laura küsst nur mich. zogen zwei Grenadier, die waren in Russland gefangen, und als sie kamen ins deutsche Quartier, sie ließen die Köpfe hangen. Da hörten sie beide die traurige Mär, dass Frankreich verloren gegangen. Besiegt und geschlagen das waffere Heer, und der Kaiser befangen. Da weinten zusammen die Grenadier, wohl auch der kläglichen Kunde. Der eine sprach: wie weh wird mir, wie brennt meine alte Wunde. Der andere sprach: das Lied ist aus, auch ich möcht mit dir sterben, doch hab ich Weib und Kind zu Haus, die ohne mich verderben. Marschiert mich Weib, marschiert mich Kind, ich trage weit besser Verlangen. Lass sie betteln gehen, wenn sie hungrig sind, mein Kaiser gefangen. Gewähr mir, Bruder, eine Bitt, wenn ich jetzt sterben werde, so nimm meine Leiche nach Frankreich mit, begrab mich in Frankreichs Ehre, das Ehrenkreuz am roten Bad sollst du ans Herz mir liegen, die Flinte gib mir in die Hand und geht mir um den Degen, so will ich liegen und horch und still, wie eine Schildwacht im Grabe, bis einst ich hören kann Hörneblö und wehende Rosse getrabe. dann reitet mein Geist so wohl über mein Grab, wie Schwerter klirren und blitzen, wie Schwerter klirren und blitzen. Dann steig ich gewaffnet der Faust im Grab, den Kaiser zu schützen.
Part 2. Okay. Italy. Finalmente. Okay. The term romanza appears frequently in Italy from the late 18th century through the Risorgimento, the unification of Italy and the disbanding of all the Italian principalities and papal states in 1871. In Italian operas of the early 19th century, a romanza was a common title for short arias in slow tempo. Examples can be found in the works of Bellini, such as I Puritani, Donizetti, from The Elixir of Love, and Don Pasquale, 1810, the latter of which I will be singing, and then Giuseppe Verdi's Il Trovatore in 1853. In Italy, almost every city had a Teatro dell'Opera, an opera house, which provided the public with a constant flow of new operatic works. In addition to this, there was an increasing demand for printed sheet music suitable for use outside of the opera house or concert hall by both the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie, who were establishing and presenting musical evenings at their private homes, salons, public concerts. Italian publishers initially published and sold piano vocal transcriptions of popular operas of the time. These were then followed by single arias and later songs for voice and piano, often commissioned by the publishers. These songs for voice and piano, known as romanze da camera or romanze da salotto, were used for study and instructional purposes, sung in private dwellings, and sung later during public musicales. The most common type of Italian romanza is a song which tells a story or describes a particular emotional state, such as hope, joy, sorrow, despair, etc. I will be singing two examples in which the protagonists in these songs are portrayed as victims of tragic personal betrayal, such as mercadantes abbandonati, or as figures living in the shadows of society, such as in Ponchielli's L'Echo. The texts of such romanze are for the most part by poets and lyricists who are less known today or otherwise anonymous. Occasionally, however, we do find musical settings of poetry by great Italian authors such as Dante, Giacomo Leopardi, or Alessandro Manzoni, or by well-known opera librettists of the time, such as Verdi's librettists Francesco Piave and Andrea Maffei. Toward the end of the 19th century, with the premiere in 1890 of Pietro Mascagni's opera Cavalleria Rusticana, it signaled the arrival in Italy of a new form of operatic drama called verismo, meaning realism. Verismo opera is distinguished by realistic depictions of everyday life, particularly among the contemporary lower classes. In response to this, a new kind of Italian art song began to appear in the salons and drawing rooms as a successor to the romanza. These new songs, called liriche, appeared in the form of extended arias with sections of elongated melodic recitative, more innovative and virtuosic accompaniments, more freedom in form than the earlier romanze, and with greater emphasis on the relationship between music and text, thus making the liriche more realistic, like in bellissimo opera. Composers such as Catalani, Franchetti, and Tosti composed many of these more forward-looking liriche well into the 20th century and the pre-World War I period. I'll conclude our lecture recital with the Italian romanze. I hope you have found this lecture recital entertaining and informative.
Bella siccome l'angelo in terra pellegrino, fresca siccome Giglio che s'apre sul mattino, occhio che parla e ride, sguardo che cor conduide, chioma che dice l'ennaro, sorriso incantator, sorriso incantator. Innocente in Genua, che se medesima ignora, modestia impareggiabile, bontà che innamora, ai miseri pietosa, gentil, dolce amorosa, la fatta nascere per far beato un cor, beato un cor. Il ciel la fatta nascere per far beato un cor, per far beato un cor. Il ciel la fatta nascere per far beato, beato, per far beato Lumidate, ben mio, per me non va che pianto, per me non va che pianto. Buffo il mio labbro al canto, ogni piacer mori. Ai, che di nuova fiamma forse tu avanti in core, e bello amore scordi il tuo spere. Ai, e bello amore scordi del tuo fedele, scordi il tuo fedele. Delle mie pene atroci, quale raccolsi frutto, sol di quest'alma aiuto, la morte del mio cor, la morte del mio cor, la morte del mio cor. Non voglia Dio, non voglia Dio punirti, tieni i miei sofferti affanni, perdoni a te l'inganni, e mi richiamo in cielo. Perdoni a te l'inganni, e mi richiamo in cielo, e mi richiami in cielo. Cavalca per valli ombrose un giovincel, vado tra dolci braccia amorose, or vado invece nel cupo aver, lente or risponde nel cupo aver. Il suo cammino seguita mesto il giovincel, nella dunque vado si presto orben che monta la gioia in ciel. Ecco risponde la pace in cadono gli occhi ostile segrete a giovincel. Ah, se il solo l'anello mi quiete, lieto mi scendo dolce bello, dolce la
not going to share this either.
I dedicate the performance of this piece to one of my great baritone idols, who sang it at his final recital before he suddenly passed away. That was the great Renato Bruzon, whom I met as a student in Austria, and then later here in Los Angeles I had the great opportunity to sing Falstaff with him in the title role.
Ma scegliemi fino, tu solo bicchiero, fra caudi terreni con sé mengioniero, dov'è da stenze non c'è calore. Amai rifiamaro due sguardi fatali, crede l'amicizia fanciulla sentalli, follia di primandi, fantasmo l'usor, lasciatemi il vino, dolcezza del cor. L'amico, l'amante col tempo ne fugge, ma tu non amante chi tutto ne strugge, l'età non t'offende, ma cresci in virtù, sfiorito la pelle da tutte le rose, cos'è allegri nature delose, se tu che t'intorni la gioia che fu, l'età non t'offende, ma cresci in virtù. Chi meglio sarà con le venite, chi meglio sarà con le ferite, si te non ci desse la provvida vite, sarebbe mortale l'umano dolore. Me scegliemi il vino, solo bicchiero, fra caudi terreni, non sei montoniero, tu vita d'essenza in estizia del cuore.